Well, happy Saturday, everybody. Welcome to another live. I am excited to have our new guest on um, at noon on the East Coast, I should say. So thank you for joining us. Hi, Amber. Thank you for being here. Um, Today we get to talk to an amazing therapist, someone who has just waved at me or just popped on, the spooky therapist. So I'm excited. Hey, Blair. Um, and she is requesting to join. She's quick on this. All right. She will be on here in just a second, and we'll go ahead and get started.
Hello.
Hey,
Got
how
moved
are
my
you?
camera back a little. I'm good. How are you?
I am awake. I slept in late this morning, so that was a treat.
Oh,
Um,
I got my coffee.
there you go, and I've got my diabetic sugar-free hot chocolate, so that's wonderful, to say the least. So thank you for being a part of this live. Thank you for joining me.
Yeah, I'm glad to be here.
Yeah, I know. Blair already said she loves the pink. Um,
Thank you.
I've been talking about your hair, so that's good. Um, I had a debate with someone on live the other day of what I should dye my chin hair, and the consensus was blue.
I was
Uh,
about to say so.
I could do blue, I could do pink, I don't care, right? So, all right. So, why don't you go ahead and just take a moment, introduce yourself to our audience that's listening now, and we'll be here later.
All right. Well, hi everybody. I'm Easin back. I am a marriage and family therapist, but technically, like, I only see individuals, but that is my degree. But I'm a psychotherapist and I specialize in religious trauma and especially, in particular, like young adults with religious trauma.
Mm, awesome. And I know that my audience has one major question for you, okay? And it's a very important question. It might be the most important question we ask all day. All right.
Okay.
Um, how did you pick your IG name?
So I went really basic at first, and I think I just put like Eason Beck MFT, and then I was just thinking about how a big focus for me is being true to yourself and like individuality. And then I was like, why is my Insta handle so boring? I'm gonna pick something that's really like fun and true to myself. And I'm like, maybe I'll just show you guys. That's very true to myself. I mean, I have like a skeleton in my house at like all times of the year. I don't know if you can see that. There he is. Um, anyway, I love everything spooky and Halloween, and that's something that I've been able to embrace more as I've deconstructed
Oh,
openly.
now I
I'm
my name's really boring. I need to change my handle.
sorry. I'm not saying that anyone else's name is boring.
Oh, that's funny. That's awesome. Yeah. That's one of those things I noticed when I went to your page. I was like, wow, this is really cool. It's like Halloween all the time on her page or something, right? So, but with great content at the same time. It was fascinating to me. So, I loved it. So, all right. So let's just dive right into this, right? So, um, did you have a religious background, and what was it?
Yeah, so I was I would say probably best described as evangelical Christian, but it was a home church situation, so we did not belong to a particular church. And we were also part of the conservative Christian homeschooling community. So there were a lot of people who were very fundamentalist Christian in that community. I never heard the term quiverful till after I left, but I would say there was some influence there from having many, many children. Um, yeah, and a lot of anti-government people as well, like kids who didn't have birth certificates and just all kinds of things that my fiance, who didn't grow up in that, is like, where did you come from? Um, I don't know if that covers it.
Okay, so you grew up in I mean, what people would consider a cult these days, right? So, depending on how you define it, right? So, um, what was the breaking point, or between you and religion, or walk me through if you don't mind, or walk us through um, how deep you were and how you, for lack of better words, escaped or empowered yourself to move on.
Yeah, I was giving a lot of thought to this question because it was so many steps, and I would say I think that's something I hear from a lot of people who leave those kind of environments is you might have like a first exposure and then there will be many, many steps along the way. I will say I was very fortunate. My family was probably like honestly more in the middle for the community we were in, so I was able to go to a state college, and that was chosen for me because I could commute there and be sort of like under watch. Um, but as you probably know, if you're going to a public university, you're going to get exposed to all different ideas. And I slowly started to deconstruct from there, but I don't think that I knew what was happening. I think it was all in the back of my mind. And then finally, I ended up having an unplanned pregnancy, and that started to really make me question a lot of things I'd been taught, like the poor sex ed and pro life started to feel very different to me. Um, I ended up keeping my pregnancy. My son is now almost 7, but it did start to make me question a lot of things that I had been taught. And again, I think it was like a several year process rather than like a wake up moment.
Okay, and you said your is it correct? Your fiance wasn't in any kind of organized religion.
My my fiance actually went to Catholic school, like a pretty mainstream sort of Catholic school. So he jokes that that's probably the easiest way to turn someone into an atheist is just send them to Catholic school. He had a very different experience from me in that he was surrounded by people who also were just like, yeah, we don't believe this, whatever. And I think that is interesting when it comes to religious trauma. I think that things tend to be different if you're surrounded by other people who are also like, yeah, we don't really take this seriously, versus what I was in, where it was like, this is everything and you cannot step outside of this. So I think that would be something that predisposes people to religious trauma versus his experience.
Gotcha. Gotcha. So you came out of religion. What how do I put this? Okay, so have you always had a desire to be a counselor, and what made you um, decide to specialize in religious trauma?
So I, again, I feel like part of deconstructing is like you start to get to know yourself better as you go through that process. So I would again say that kind of like back of my mind thing. I sort of always wanted to be a counselor, but it didn't feel uh, viable, like given the way I was being raised to be like a homeschooling mother myself. And graduate school was not really something that felt possible. Um, but I would say I always loved talking to people who were struggling, including like in the circle that I was in. Like I remember I would always go for the people who seemed down or like they needed to talk about something. So I feel like that was always there, but it wasn't until I had fully left and my son's grandmother, um, not my mother, but his dad's mom, was extremely supportive and very like she was very supportive of me and saw a lot in me and was like, I don't think you should enter education. Like, you should get a graduate degree. And also, my own therapist at the time uh, had pointed out, she was like, have you ever thought of going into the field? Because from talking to you, I feel like you see sides of everything, and I could see that being a good fit. Um, so, yes, it sort of was like outside influences brought things that had been in the back of my mind for a long time. Um, so,
That's
yes, I always wanted to.
that is awesome. Would you just for those that are logging on, maybe um, don't understand a lot about religious trauma? Would you kind of define religious trauma?
Yeah, so this was like I can really struggle with definitions because I'm wordy. So I've refreshed myself on this before logging on. But I would say religious trauma is when religious ideas have been so rigid that it's impacting someone's social, emotional, psychological functioning, like most technical definition. Um, and I feel like that example of like someone who is maybe raised in a religion, but they sort of have a natural shift away where they're like, I don't really believe this, but it doesn't particularly impact their relationships or their mental health. There's that. And then there's religious trauma where people are experiencing a lot of emotional and psychological effects, particularly from the breaking away. So there's often like that relational piece where there's a lot of conflict in those close relationships. And that's traumatic. So people can have a lot of CPTSD or complex trauma symptoms from those relationships being disrupted.
Is it a fairly new development in the field, the religious trauma, understanding it?
I would say so because I feel like compared to other things that I'm interested in, there's not as much information. There's a good website called Journey Free that is helpful, but I feel like it is kind of like an under-researched area at this point,
Yeah,
and people are starting to become more aware. I don't know what your experience was with finding resources yourself.
yeah. I mean, it was. I mean, the closest I came to finding someone that would help or was going to help me through my religious trauma was I finally found a non-religious counselor or therapist, right? So
It was hard to find. It was hard to find a therapist who wasn't.
yes, in this, I live in Maryland, but I live in a very red part of Maryland, and so the conservative, that I mean, it's highly religious area, and so for finding somebody that did not have any kind of religious affiliation from the past, just it was difficult to find. At least for me, it was because
Mhm.
usually the therapists I went to see all had some sort of bent towards the church or towards a god or religion or what have you, and I needed someone that understood religious trauma but also didn't have an ulterior motive, if that's correct. Um, because I've had therapists like that. The ulterior motive is kind of without them meaning it, maybe to get you back into church or hey, identify with a god or whatever have you. I don't know how right that should be or shouldn't be, but that's how it was here with that. And so finding somebody that wasn't going to even subconsciously push me towards forgiving, going back, anything like that was difficult to find, or have some other agenda, even spirituality of any kind, because
Yeah.
I've run into a fair amount of therapists like that. So, of course, all the ones the church recommend are going to be Christian therapists as it is, right? So it was always those, right?
Yeah.
So that's why I was wondering about the religious trauma because I talked to a few clients I have that are in, well, actually, all my clients are seeing therapists besides me. Um, some of them are having trouble connecting with their therapist because they're having trouble seeing religious trauma. They aren't educated on it. It's something kind of new for them. Um,
Yeah.
so it's exciting to meet somebody like you who is educated and schooled in this um, and understands it. And we can talk about that later, but that's the bummer of you being landlocked to one state. So I wish. So
Yeah.
that being the case, I'm sorry, I just kind of rambled there. Um, what is
No,
your
it's good.
what's your favorite part of your job?
That's a good question. I really love like watching people start to try new things. I don't know, that's the first thing to pop into my head. Like specifically talking about religious trauma, like when people start to get to this place where they're feeling ready to try things that maybe didn't feel like an option for them before. And they're finding out what they like and don't like. I find that really, really exciting. I mean, I like my whole job, but I would say that makes me super excited when someone comes in and they're like, I tried this thing that I never thought that I would. Um, and yeah, it's just like really exciting to see a whole new kind of like world open up to people.
Very cool.
And compassion. And the self-compassion, that's also like where if people have had cutoffs or other like difficulty with their families and they start to process through that and find some self-forgiveness, that's really rewarding too.
Yeah. So you say you see people that one at a time, right? I mean, like not together, not couples. Um, I imagine that they can relate or at least feel very comfortable because you seem very empathetic and compassionate.
I hope so.
You do. You do. All the times I've had the opportunity to talk to you and hear your story, it definitely seems that way. And it was confirmed, I think, by your therapist, by family members, whatever have you, or outside sources, as you would say, that you're really good at your job or would be really good at this job. So that's great to hear. So if you could give a piece of advice to help others through religious deconstruction trauma, what would it be?
First thing that popped in my head is like build your support system. Like that is whatever other, even if you're in therapy, like that's maybe 1 hour a week, and having people outside who are going to be able to reality check you when things are pulling you back and to also just make life worth living. Like, I mean, I'm an MFT who sees individuals, but I'm a marriage and family therapist because it's relationship focused. And you can think through all of your thoughts, but if you don't have satisfying relationships, like life is not going to be, it's not going to be the best it could be. So I'm like, start building your support system before you leave if you can. If you can't, start finding those people, whether it's online through groups or joining hobbies that maybe might not be religious in orientation, just like making sure that you have those people who are going to really be there for you.
Have you encountered, obviously not going into details on any specific clients, but have you encountered people that have, um, through religious trauma, through leaving their religion, have you encountered a lot of people that have lost family members because of it?
Absolutely. I feel like those are people who had that experience are maybe the most likely to end up in therapy because that is really distressing. Like that is one of the most painful experiences that I think people have. I know without like revealing more than you're comfortable. I think you had mentioned going through something like that.
Yeah.
I've been through that. I feel like it's almost ubiquitous for people who have religious trauma.
And and religious trauma, just to kind of clarify a little bit, can span obviously across all religions. Have you, through your job, dealt with a lot of different types of religions and what people bring in?
Yeah, for sure. I'm, of course, like most knowledgeable about evangelical Christianity, but I've had clients who were Muslim. I've had clients who were Jehovah's Witnesses, Mormon. Jehovah's Witnesses and Mormon, there's a pretty strong communities for both of those. Um, Especially the ex-Mormon community is like really active on Instagram, I've noticed.
You said that, and your tank top friend just logged on, and she has a lot to say about that. I just did a live with her, so um, definitely the case. They're very active. That's um, I've seen a lot of that. So all that being said, what what's your future plans? Like, do you have any grand aspirations, or are you just loving what you're doing?
I think for now, I'm really loving what I'm doing. And I'm definitely in that like family phase of life where my child's very young. I think I would love to write like a book, but maybe when I'm older. Um, but yeah, for now, I just really like having my practice and probably starting like a religious trauma support group. I was hoping to kick that off. So if anyone's interested, you can follow
Is,
me and find out more.
is that
Yeah.
you're going to advertise through Instagram? Is it going to be on another platform, or
That'll be here. I'll advertise here and on my website.
okay? That would be awesome. I may even sign up for that one. So, um, all right. Um, so, is it okay if I tell them which state you're in? Is that okay?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Okay. So, she is in Pennsylvania. And in Pennsylvania, obviously, for those that don't understand a little bit or don't know this, therapists are not allowed, if I'm correct, and you correct me if I'm wrong, not allowed to see people that are outside of their state. Is
Yep.
that correct? However, I wanted to mention that you're in Pennsylvania in case anybody logs on, hears, or anything like that, that they know that they could go to you for healing and dealing with religious trauma, which is why I point that out. I wish that you guys were able to go across borders. You
Yeah,
know,
hopefully it's coming. Psychologists just got that, but marriage and family therapists haven't yet. So hopefully we'll see. And then it's great to have people like yourself who can uh, be more mobile. I don't know. But yeah.
right, right. Now, I think it's great. I love the dynamic between a coach and a therapist. I definitely, when people come to me and they say, "Hey, I need help," if I sense at all that they need any kind of internal work, mental work, whatever you call it, psychological work, I'm always the first thing is like, "Are you seeing a therapist?" Because how important that is. That's not the job that I do, um, but definitely the job that you do. And so I really appreciate everything you're doing. I appreciate the fact that um, you're schooled in religious trauma. Am I allowed to ask, are your, for people that just might have general questions, are your DMs open for them to ask those questions? Or I didn't know how you work that, how private that is.
Yeah, I'm open to that. I can be kind of slow with responding. And obviously no emergencies. But other than that, like I do like questions and to connect with people. So yeah.
Okay. Now tell me, if you don't mind, something fun about yourself. What do you consider that's fun? I know that's kind of an off the cuff question, but you've already demonstrated that you have a skeleton in your house, um, which is great. What else? What else do you find fun?
I usually like to share that I am the lead vocalist in my own punk rock band, which was definitely something I always wanted to do and couldn't do before. That brings me lots of happiness. And my fiance also is a lead singer in a different band. So we love going to each other's shows and it's lots of fun.
Advertise any of those shows, or like, I mean, that's pretty cool. Um,
Well, I don't want any of my, I don't think any of my clients or would be watching this, but I'm like, that would be so weird if they came to one of my shows. It would be
yeah,
good.
true.
Um, but yeah,
So if
I
I
do have this, I have that separate.
DM you, would you give me a link to you guys, both of you, like your bands and stuff?
Yeah, I'm definitely comfortable. I will definitely be comfortable sharing them with you, Brad.
That would be amazing. That's awesome for you. And how did you get into that?
That was also something that was always like I would have loved to be a performer, but that was definitely blacklisted. Um, and then after a little while of working through the guilt, probably like a few years of working through the guilt, I found people online and we started a band and we've been doing that for like 3 years now. Yeah, like 3 years. So, um,
So
the
that,
internet has been a great tool for me personally. I don't know about you. I find it really positive in some ways to find people with similar experiences.
oh yeah, definitely. Very much so. It's difficult though to find people with similar experiences when you've been a pastor for your entire life and you're out. You know, I mean, it's like, okay. But I'm still looking. So let me. You mentioned something in that statement which I thought was pretty interesting. For our audience that are dealing with guilt, you work through guilt. What were some of the steps, or how did you even start working through that guilt?
I'm like lots of therapy. And also that again, I think that support system of like that can be so valuable to have those people around you who will I'm always like reassurance is okay. Like sometimes I feel like there's this idea like we shouldn't need reassurance. We need some outside reassurance. It shouldn't be like our only source, of course, but sometimes you really need that, especially in those early stages. I'm comfortable sharing that I remember when I very first like made my full break away, I had nothing and I had to go buy underwear because I literally had nothing. And I remember feeling so guilty. I still bought the underwear that would have been like approved. Um, so I would also say start small. Like I remember that was a big step for me when after some time and unpacking my guilt that I went out and bought underwear that I really liked for the first time. So I'm like, even just start with the little things and unpack the guilt about the little things. And then like the bigger things will follow.
Okay. Now, was that related way to purity culture?
Oh yeah. Definitely 100%.
Yeah. How and I know this is probably not a fair question, but have a timetable on it, so feel free to just tell me, no, Brad, I'm not answering that. But um, do you? How long did it take you to get over purity culture, and then, or are you still dealing with it?
I think I would never assume that I fully unpacked anything because I just think that's an unfair expectation to put on myself. But I would say pretty well unpacked, and I think grad school does a really good job with that, especially with my particular degree, we have classes in like human sexuality. Um, that was very helpful. Um, But yeah, I think I just always expect that things will pop up and that it's going to be okay if things do pop up and work through it. And that's kind of the perspective that I tend to take with my clients too, because I think that people can put a lot of pressure on themselves to be healed or like not be triggered by things anymore. And yes, we want that to get better, but also like we're human and things will pop up. And it's more about knowing that you're going to be okay when things do pop up.
Yeah, I love that answer because I think you're right. It's an unrealistic expectation to think that you're ever going to be completely healed from something. Not saying you won't at times, or have, especially purity culture. A lot of my clients or people I talk to, they'll have great victories, and
Mm-hmm.
they'll be like, "Oh yeah, I'm doing great. I think I'm finally over this." And then, a couple days later, there'll be something little that will kind of trigger
Yeah.
or remind them, and they'll have not a setback per se, but what they'll feel like is a setback. Um,
Yeah.
Makes sense. So um, I think I try to say, hey, you've got to give yourself some grace when it comes to that. You can't have that unrealistic, as you said, expectation. Um,
Yeah. And the setbacks don't make the progress not real, is the thing.
yeah, although it makes it for them, or even myself at times, it makes it feel like, oh man, I just blew everything I knew. You know what I'm saying? I mean, it makes you feel that way, and that's a shame, right? That comes in there. So, reminding myself, or other people reminding themselves that, hey, listen, just because you have a rough moment does not mean that everything you've worked towards is void with that. And so I think that's very wise words of advice right there. So, okay, so let me ask you, for people that are going to watch this, how can people follow and support you, um, and and really kind of engage with you?
So I guess y'all see my Instagram is the spooky therapist. That's probably where I'm the most active, and I guess I like Instagram the most. And then my website is linked on my Instagram if anyone happens to be in Pennsylvania and wants to connect there. I try to keep up with my blog. I'm a little behind. And then I also have TikTok is also the spooky therapist. Um, yeah, those are the places where I'm most active.
Yeah, if you have not checked out her page, let me encourage you to do so. Following her has been very enlightening. Honestly, I love the information you put out on your page. I love how when you post something, it for some reason it always seems to speak to me. And so love content. So if you are not following the spooky therapist, um, let me encourage you as soon as this video is over to pop on over, give her a follow. You won't regret it. There's a lot of healing in what you post as well. So remember, she's got a TikTok page and her website. I love your website as well. So I've been there. It's
Brad has a good website too. Lots of multiple blog posts.
wow. Thank you. But it is an honor to know you. It is wonderful to be able to go to you and pick your brain if I need some sort of in-depth information on certain topics, and I consider you a valuable resource. So thank you for putting yourself out there and doing what you love. I think that's great.
I think it comes across that you love what you do.
It does, right? And so I'm excited for you, and I hope you do write that book. I think
Oh,
that
yeah, someday.
yeah, it definitely do. I'll advertise the heck out of that thing. So look, I got my religious verbiage on. I'll advertise the heck out of it. I'll advertise the hell out of it if you write a book. So there we go. Is that better? So thank you so much for being here today. Thank you for sharing. Great. Someone else decided they loved
Hair.
hair. Yes, they're loving the pink. So look forward to talking to you again soon.
Yep.
All right.
Bye. Thanks
Bye.
for
Talk to you later.